Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Secretary, particularly for your interest in preventing the premature closing of our country's coal and nuclear power plants. But let me speak to a broader audience. This committee has held numerous hearings on this topic of grid reliability over the past few years. But during that time, during the last 10 years, 531 coal-fired units and 11 nuclear plants have been closed. Their output has been replaced with gas plants. But unfortunately, only half of those plants have a firm supply for gas. Meaning, without a supply contract in a cold spell, gas is understandably diverted from creating electricity for home residential heating. And according to NERC, in the past 3 years, America's experienced over 4,000 forced outages of power plants across America due to a lack of fuel. 94% of those outages were gas-driven power plants. So this should not, unfortunately, these statistics don't give me the confidence that closing more coal units and nuclear power plants is a dependable option for national security. And you've been talking about national security throughout your presentation today. For example, nationally, in January, Nettle reported, without the resilience of coal, the East Coast would have suffered severe electrical shortages, leading likely to widespread blackouts. And then earlier this year, ISO New England concluded the possibility that power plants won't be able to get the fuel they need to run is the foremost challenge to a reliable power grid in New England. According to PJM, the PJM's market, it can also be shown that the demand for the grid could not have been met without coal. These are all quotes that are coming from major sources, major reliable sources. So taking these reports in consideration, can you just imagine what our grid stability was going to look like with dependability and resilience if we have fewer coal and nuclear power plants? Mr. Secretary, you and I have had numbers of conversations about it, and this committee has been saying all along that our fuel security is a national security issue. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to submit for the record a series of documents, a letter that we have from 23 bipartisan members of Congress asking you to invoke 202C. I have another letter that's written to the President, bipartisan support for some kind of implementation to save our aging coal and nuclear power plants. And we have 4 other letters of support from labor unions across the country and interest in saving and implementing 202C. Quite frankly, Mr. Secretary, I believe it's time. You tried the 403. Some form of 202C or some other emergency act is necessary if we're going to have national security. So I'm calling on you to use whatever legal power you have so that we can meet the challenges that our manufacturers need and our communities need all across America with having a reliable grid system. So I'd like to have your thoughts. On last Thursday, I was with the President, and he specifically said, I think in a crowd in West Virginia, I think we can work something out on 202C. I know he's had conversations with you about that. Can you share to the extent of not your private conversations, where do you think we're going with 202C? Sir. Or some component of that? Thank you.
Mr. McKinley, I hope that your remarks have been televised and we can put them up because you have succinctly made the point for exactly what has to happen in this country from the standpoint of being able to protect the resiliency and the reliability of our electrical grid. And if you do not have sufficient coal and nuclear plants, the day is coming when, particularly in the northeastern part of the United States, because of other restrictions that they have on energy flowing into that part of the world, that the national security of this country is jeopardized. I don't think that's appropriate in any way. political decisions that put people's lives in jeopardy are inappropriate. And I think this president understands that. He has had multiple conversations with me and others in his administration to find a solution to that. That's exactly what we're working on today. There are a number, as you said, 202C is one of those. There may be other options which we need to look at as well.
Are we getting close to a decision?
Expedition is of importance.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Maryland.